All right, continuing on with the Gregory of Nyssa, the Life of Moses, Book 2. Last section was birth and childhood, and this section is entitled The Burning Bush. This has a lot of interesting insights right off the bat, so I hope you like it. It is upon us who continue in this quiet and peaceful course of life that the truth will shine, illuminating the eyes of our soul with its own rays. This truth, which was then manifested by the ineffable and mysterious illumination which came to Moses, is God. And if the flame by which the soul of the prophet was illuminated was kindled from a thorny bush, even this fact will not be useless for our inquiry. For if truth is God and truth is light, the gospel testifies by these sublime and divine names to the God who made himself visible to us in the flesh. Such guidance of virtue leads us to know that light which has reached down even to human nature. Lest one think that the radiance did not come from a material substance, this light did not shine from some luminary among the stars, but came from an earthly bush and surpassed the heavenly luminaries in brilliance. From this we learn also the mystery of the Virgin. The light of divinity which through birth shone from her into human life did not consume the burning bush, even as the flower of her virginity was not withered by giving birth. That light reaches us what we must do to stand within the rays of the true light. Sandaled feet cannot ascend the height where the light of truth is seen, but the dead and earthly covering of skins, which was placed around our nature at the beginning when we were found naked because of disobedience to the divine will, must be removed from the feet of the soul. When we do this, the knowledge of the truth will result and manifest itself. The full knowledge of being comes about by purifying our opinion concerning non-being. In my view, the definition of truth is this: not to have a mistaken apprehension of being. Falsehood is a kind of impression which arises in the understanding about non-being, as though what does not exist does in fact exist. But truth is the sure apprehension of real being. So whoever applies himself in quietness to higher philosophical matters over a long period of time will barely apprehend what true being is. That is, what possesses existence in its own nature, and what non-being is, that is, what is existence only in appearance, with no self-subsisting nature. It seems to me that at the time of the great Moses was instructed in the theophany, he came to know that none of those things which are apprehended by sense perception and contemplated by understanding really subsist, but that the transcendent essence and cause of the universe on which everything depends alone subsists. For even if the understanding looks upon any other existing things, reason observes in absolutely none of them the self-sufficiency by which they could exist without participating in true being. On the other hand, that which is always the same, neither increasing nor diminishing, immutable to all change, whether better or worse, for it is far removed from the inferior and it has no superior, standing in need of nothing else, alone, desirable, participated in by all, but not lessened by their participation. This is truly real being, and the apprehension of it is the knowledge of truth. In the same way that Moses on that occasion attained to his knowledge, so now does everyone who, like him, divests himself of the earthly covering and looks to the light shining from the bramble bush, that is, to the radiance which shines upon us through this thorny flesh, and which is, as the gospel says, the true light and the truth itself. A person like this becomes able to help others to salvation, to destroy the tyranny which holds power wickedly, and to deliver to freedom everyone held in evil servitude. The transformation of the right hand and the rods changing into a snake became the first of the miracles. These seem to me to signify in a figure the mystery of the Lord's incarnation, a manifestation of deity to men which effects the death of the tyrant and sets free those under his power. What leads me to this understanding is the testimony of the prophets in the gospel. The prophet declares, quote, "This is the change of the right hand of the Most High," end quote, indicating that although the divine nature is contemplated in its immutability by condescension to the weakness of human nature, it was changed to our shape and form. When the hand of the lawgiver was extended from his bosom, it was changed to an unnatural complexion, and when placed again in his bosom, it returned to its own natural beauty. Again, the only begotten who is in the bosom of the Father is he who is the right hand of the Most High. When he was manifested to us from the bosom of the Father, he was changed to be like us. After he wiped away our infirmities, he again returned to his own bosom at the hand which had been among us and had received our complexion. The Father is the bosom of the right hand. What is impassible by nature did not change into what is passable, but what is mutable and subject to passions was transformed into impassibility through its participation in the immutable. The change from a rod into a snake should not trouble the lover of Christ, as if we're adapting the doctrine of the incarnation to an unsuitable animal. For the truth himself, through the voice of the gospel, does not refuse a contemplation like this in saying, quote, "And the Son of Man must be lifted up as Moses lifted up the serpent of the desert." The teaching is clear. For if the Father of the sin is called a serpent by Holy Scripture, and what is born of the serpent is certainly a serpent, it follows that sin is synonymous with the one who begot it. But the apostolic word testifies that the Lord was made into sin for our sake, by being invested with our sinful nature. This figure, therefore, is rightly applied to the Lord. For if sin is as serpent and the Lord became sin, the logical conclusion should be evident to all. By becoming sin, he became also a serpent, which is nothing other than sin. For our sake, he became a serpent that he might devour and consume the Egyptian serpents produced by the sorcerers. This done, the serpent was changed back into a rod by which sinners are brought to their senses, and those slackening on the upward and toilsome course of virtue are given rest. The rod of faith supporting them through their high hopes, quote, "Only faith can guarantee the blessings that we hope for." He who has some insight into these things right away becomes a god to those who resist the truth, who have been distracted to a material and unsubstantial delusion. They disdain the discussion of being as much idle talk. As Pharaoh says, quote, "Who is Yahweh that I should listen to him? I do not know Yahweh," end quote. He considered valuable only the material and fleshly things which characterize lives governed by the most irrational sense. If, on the other hand, he had been strengthened by the illumination of the light, and he had received such strength and power against his enemies, then as one who was developed as an athlete by strenuous practice under his trainer, he would boldly and confidently strip for the contest with his opponents. With that rod, the word of faith, in his hand, he would prevail against the Egyptian serpents. The foreign wife will follow him, for there are certain things derived from profane education which should not be rejected when we propose to give birth to virtue. Indeed, moral and natural philosophy may become at certain times a comrade, friend, and companion of life to the higher way, provided that the offspring of this union introduce nothing of a foreign defilement. Since his son had not been circumcised, so as to cut off completely everything hurtful and impure, the angel who met them brought the fear of death. His wife appeased the angel when she presented her offspring as pure by completely removing that mark by which the foreigner was known. I think that if someone who has been initiated under the guidance of the history follows closely the order of the historical figures, the sequence of the development and virtue marked in our account will be clear. There is something fleshly and uncircumcised in what is taught by philosophy's generative faculty. When that has been completely removed, there remains the pure Israelite race. For example, pagan philosophy says that the soul is immortal. This is a pious offspring. But it also says that the souls pass from bodies to bodies and are changed from a rational to an irrational nature. This is a fleshly and alien foreskin. And there are many other such examples. It says there is a God, but it thinks of him as material. It acknowledges him as a creator, but says he needed matter for creation. It affirms that he is both good and powerful, but that in all things he submits to the necessity of fate. And one could describe in some detail how good doctrines are contaminated by profane philosophy's absurd additions. When these are completely removed, the angel of God comes to us in mercy, as if rejoicing in the true offspring of these doctrines. So that was the burning bush section. Next will be the meeting with Aaron. Thank you for listening.